Good company, but ultimately I'm responsible for defining sort of direction and vision for the product alongside my CEO and other product managers, and then really making sure that that comes to life. So work very closely with product marketing at my organization, which is still, product marketing is still pretty young at ActiveCampaign, but appreciate everything that y'all do in your jobs. It's incredibly helpful. How many of you, just show of hands, have heard of ActiveCampaign or used ActiveCampaign? Oh, a few, great, okay. But we are a marketing automation company that started in 2003, really focusing on email marketing, and then quickly grew into marketing automation focused on small and medium-sized businesses. And so have a CRM, marketing automation, but we're really looking to move past that into customer experiences and not just that marketing automation element. But we have 70,000 customers and growing. You know, customer experiences are huge for us, and we really try and think about how to make those better. And a little bit about me. I've been working in marketing automation for a little over 7 years. So I started as a reseller of ExactTarget, which is now Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And I worked with prospects and customers on using marketing automation to really build out and make their marketing strategy more robust. I joined ActiveCampaign in 2015 and built out the customer success department, so really focusing on onboarding and getting them to adopt the product and prevent churn. Did a tour in sales as a sales engineer and understood how can our platform work with other stacks of platforms, how do they want data to move, what do they want to use this platform for versus others, and really ingesting all of that data so that our customers could really create segmented, tailored automations, and then joined the product org last year as principal product manager. So really focused on users and how they use the product and what they're doing, and yeah, that's a little about me. So this is what we're trying to avoid, and often we still run into this problem, even at a company that preaches not doing this. But product and product marketing, they often have a great core narrative, a great value prop, they have a great product, and then they just sort of like talk about it the same way to everyone. And we were guilty of this too. We were batch and blasting, we were not targeting our ads, our website wasn't personalized. It was sort of like anyone who becomes aware of ActiveCampaign or uses ActiveCampaign, here's this story. And it's a great story. It's not that it's a bad story. It's just not really targeted and relevant to each individual person and where they are in that customer life cycle. And so when thinking about that customer life cycle and sort of the funnel, this should seem pretty standard, but ultimately guiding them through from awareness, social content, ads, website, through to interest, can we at least get some information about them, to evaluation, to that purchase. And one of the biggest things that we focus on is that purchase should not be the end of that funnel. And far too often, our users and people who are marketing sort of do everything that they can to get to that purchase, and then they're like, cool, we did it, and then they move on. But a lot happens after that purchase. And so you have onboarding and retention and expansion, and hopefully building advocacy so that your users are actually building the top of the funnel for you and some of that top of the funnel, and they're advocating for your product. And so we really don't love that purchase is sort of the biggest focal point. The other big thing that we think about, especially for our platform, which has a trial and people can get access to it before that purchase, is that our onboarding begins in that evaluation stage. So that evaluation stage, I call it the activation stage. They took the bait, they actually are expressing some interest, and our onboarding starts there. That is when we really have to start showing them the value of what they're touching and experiencing before they make the purchase. If you start at the purchase where you're already behind the game. But since we sort of internally started saying, let's not make it all about this purchase, we changed up how we think of that funnel a little bit to more around, regardless of where you are in that customer life cycle, if you're in onboarding, if you're a customer and we're focusing on retention, if we're focusing on upsell or cross-sell, there is still that level of building awareness, gaining interest, having the user evaluate to some desired action. We want them to do something, and that doesn't have to be a purchase. That could be start the trial. That could be book a demo. That could be a repeat purchase. It could be a cross-sell. And so that desired action really becomes the sort of end-all be-all depending on where they are in that life cycle. And then we're building journeys for sort of each step of the way and each conversion point from that stage of the funnel to the next. However, even if we do this is like a happy path, right? We're like, yeah, of course, they come to my website, they give us our email, they get a trial, they pay, and then they buy more. Like never happens, right? So we have these expectations of like, let's just build a happy path and they're gonna do exactly what we want them to do, and like, yay, we get to go home. And that's never true. And so even two people who get to your site from the same ad and get your trial, they are wildly different in how they are using your trial or engaging with your site or doing anything else that you're tracking. And so part of the goal of building these optimized journeys is being prepared for that second image. Being prepared for any way that they go, we can A, track that, B, reference it and use it as a way to personalize the next step that they're going through. And so that way you get from this to actually, and I hope those dots, oh, they do, good, to actually identifying segments of people and talking to them in a way that's going to resonate with them. A lot of times we hear sort of right message, right time, right person. We've switched that a little internally also to say the right user and the right time with the right action. So it's not necessarily a message. What is that action that we're trying to lead them toward, and what's that action that we're going to do? And that's what really creates that personalized behavioral marketing. The other big thing that we focus on is that we're trying to do it in a way that doesn't feel robotic or cold. Yes, automation is sort of running the behind the scenes, but how can we still have it have that human touch and that human feel? This is usually the key. The key to automation is not let me set something up so that I don't have to operate as often in the tool set. It's actually making it more relevant, less robotic, less cold. So how do we start doing this? First thing that we want to do is blend our customer intelligence with our business knowledge. So everyone in this room probably has ridiculous business knowledge. We know our product, we know our offering, we know the value prop, we know the pricing, we know how our sales teams operate, we know what they're great at pitching, we know how our success teams work, how our account managers operate, and we can tell that story. We have a great core narrative. But we may not have as high customer intelligence, or we may not have defined those groups of users as clearly as we want to. So who are they? We have buyer personas, we have user personas, but where are they in that life cycle? Are we able to tell what they're engaged with and what they're not, what they're doing on our site, if they're talking to our teams, if they're engaging with support? But do we have that customer intelligence so that we can clearly understand where in that life cycle they are and then tailor that perfect core narrative we have to those users at the right time? And so we have to start defining that right user. And this is really just thinking of those big buckets of people that you can start saying they're all similar and sort of in that life cycle together. And then what is that highest level goal that you want them to reach at those stages? So these are some examples, but the core ones that we obviously have leads. These are non-platform users. These could be podcast subscribers, blog subscribers, visitors to our website, people that come to our events. And we're ultimately trying to get them to trial or book a demo. We want to get them engaged in some way. We have our trials, and really the goal there is get that purchase. So that's the one time that purchase works. And then we have expired trials. So they trial, they don't do anything. How do we get them to reactivate, or how do we get them to get in touch with us? Because they obviously expressed some interest, but something wasn't working out. We have our customers. We have plan tiers on our platforms. So within customers, we have upsell candidates, we have cross-sell candidates, and so we can really understand who are our customers. And our goal there is really product adoption or expansion. How can I get them to touch more of the product, or how can I get them to pay more to get more access to the product? And then canceled customers. So how do we get them to reactivate? Or if we release something that we know they churned because they didn't have that, how do we get them to get a demo with a sales rep or an account manager? So we really want to define the right users and the buckets, and then we want to start segmenting. So we have probably 20 different automations that are funneling people through at different parts of the life cycle to tag them at the appropriate step that they're at. And so we use our platform for this, but tons of platforms have tags, fields, lists, however you want to do it. But make sure that you're tracking enough so that you can do it. So do you know what they're touching? Do you know how they're engaging with you? Do you know what they want? Are they upsell candidates? Are they not? And even with upsell candidates, we have tons of things that go from one tier to the next. So if I want to upgrade a tier, I could get access to 20 different things. But how do you start identifying what's going to be the one that really gets them to pay more? What are they engaging with in the platform that sort of lends you to think that's going to be the thing that if we start talking about the value add, they're going to be really likely to upgrade? You can also look at content they're consuming. So it doesn't have to be within the product, but what are they curious about? What are they asking about? What are they sort of implicitly saying that they're interested in? Then you want to start taking the right actions at the right time. The biggest thing here, again, is a focus not necessarily on message. It doesn't have to be an email. It can be, but think about channels. So can I add them to an ad custom audience? Can I send a text or a site message? Do I want to get a human involved? Do I want the account manager to reach out instead? But really thinking about what is that right action that I want to take at the time that they're either doing something or not doing something. This could be standard time, like time in trial. I know that if we get this far through the trial, I need someone to reach out or I need to send this message. And then thinking sort of outside just the whole message, what within that message do I really want to make sure? So that call to action, again, we're all funneling them down to an action. Are we making sure that we're actually communicating the right next step that we want them to take? And so making that very clear to them, we want you to do this. And so there's no questions about what they should be doing or not doing. So we do this in a few different ways. I mean, we have when customers visit how to cancel documentation, we send a little notification to our internal reps to let them know that that happened. But part of our role is also to make sure that our reps are prepared that when that documentation is viewed, what is our message? Where are they in the life cycle? What happened right before they did that? And how do we continue to have that positioning of our value add at that time when that just happened? So we, again, preach this, but didn't always practice it. So on the very far left was an email that probably went out maybe last year. And it was a great new release. It was something that we were super excited about. We knew the value. We knew people would want it. We had done customer interviews. And then we sort of fudged it up and sent the same message to everyone with a call to action that said, like, see how, which was to the help doc. For someone who just gave us their email yesterday, that is not helpful. For someone who's in a trial, still not helpful to see help documentation. So really thinking about what are we trying to communicate to different people in different parts of the life cycle. The help doc is probably only great for someone who has access to it today and doesn't need to upgrade, and we want them to use it. So we moved into thinking about that call to action and doing some simple segmentation. So at least now we know you're in a trial or you're a paying customer or you're a lead. And so if you're a lead and we have something that comes out, we actually have the call to action say start your trial instead of view a help document that sort of leads them into a dead end. And then as we started to get a little bit more sophisticated, we really started to think about how does that messaging change, not just the call to action. So as we release things, as we have moments of opportunity for upsell or expansion, it's not just book a demo, it's also all sorts of additional information about hey, you're about to pay us more money, hopefully. Here's why, and here's what the value is for why you would upgrade, or why you would talk to a sales rep about this feature or this product line. Then you want to perfect the blend of human touch and automation. So the biggest thing that we preach in ActiveCampaign is please don't automate everything. It's not going to go super well, and we have humans at our offices for reasons, and they're really good at what they do. And so where can automation augment the human experience, the person-to-person experience, and where can humans augment the messaging? And so really understanding how much do we need to automate versus how much should we be handing off to our reps to really handle that conversation. And if we are handing it off to the reps to have that conversation, do they have all the materials that they need to, again, tell the story in the right way at that time of the life cycle? And so we do this a few different ways, but when we were a really small team of like 5 customer-facing people with 50,000 customers, we couldn't talk to every lead. We couldn't onboard every customer. We couldn't reach out to every customer when they churned. And so we thought about what messages can we send and leave to the robots, but then know if they take an action or if they do something, that's when we would jump in. And so your funnel and stages are going to help you know this is absolutely when I need to jump in, and then the things that proceed up to that can sort of be handled by automation. Our success team used to handle only, a few accounts per person. That quickly grew to, 200 accounts per person. We used to have a very personal onboarding experience. We knew when they activated their first automation. We knew when they, closed their first deal, and we could reach out and say, congrats, that's amazing, you're using the product. That did not scale. And so we thought about how can I automate a congratulatory email and say, oh my gosh, you did it, yay, it's pretty, but have that call to action be to get in touch with us so that we're still having that person-to-person relationship, but the success team didn't have to be the one to initiate. So really finding that blend, and that's what's gonna make messages really relevant, really personal, and you're not gonna feel like this is just an automated email and it has nothing to do with what I'm doing or not doing. And so that blend of sort of what we want them to do in that action and their persona is going to be that sweet spot. And this, again, does not have to be for net new customers. This works for any stage in the life cycle. So I could have a customer who is super, super engaged and they're really happy. I probably want that next action to be become a referrer or an affiliate or talk about my product or leave a review. So what are those actions that move to the next part of the life cycle? I could have a great customer who's a great business fit and they're perfect for us, but they're less engaged. That next action is probably going to be to get an account manager involved or try to find ways to get them to engage with the product more. So it doesn't have to be just for net new customers. So from there, one of the biggest things that I hear when people talk about marketing automation is they say, set it and forget it. And that gives me nightmares at night, and I hate that phrase because what works today will not work tomorrow, and it certainly will not work in 6 months. And so when we talk about optimizing, that means that there's a progression, and there's testing, and there's growth and success and constant movement. So we have a culture value at ActiveCampaign that's iterate everything always. This is something that we coach our users on. This is something that we talk about all the time. But there's always room for improvement. A customer told me years ago, progress over perfection. I could not agree more. So there's always ways to grow. But the only way that you know if you're actually impacting success is to be very clear with what you're measuring. So if we're just measuring revenue, there's very little indicators of what piece of the puzzle actually touched that and impacted that. And so get really granular, and when you're building out your funnel, you shouldn't have to test the whole funnel, right? We want to test this little piece to this next action that I'm asking them to do. So is that a visit back to my website? Is it just converting them from a lead to a qualified lead or a trial? Is it a purchase? Is it a referral? Is it to book a demo? But each of these should be measured, and sort of you'll see the drop off and what's working really well in a life cycle and what's not, and then start testing against that. So some of the things that you can test, obviously channel. So do I want an email? Do I want a site message? Do I want a text message? Do I want a human? What's the best channel to sort of send this messaging out? You can also test time. So you can test, again, we talk about our trial. I can test, I know I want to send this message 3 days in, or do I want it to be more behavioral based? They did something, and so I want to send that message. Or they did something, I want to wait a little after they did it before I send a message. We all know the emails that's like, I saw you checking out, and it's like 5 minutes after you're on the website, and it's like very creepy. We all know we're all doing it, but thinking about the time delay that you want in there and testing that. Also content. So just testing, you've picked a channel or you're picking one channel, what's the content in there? And not just, the image or the subject line, but really how you're phrasing words, what the headlines are, colors, everything like that. And then again, that call to action. So that call to action is going to be the thing that you can measure and actually show impact on because they're doing something. And so test the heck out of that across every channel that you're sending on, because that's gonna really lead to knowing if things are working or not. So real quick to recap, identify your users. Where are they? Do you know if they're there? Are you tracking to know if they're there? And what is that next action that you want them to take? And this is throughout the life cycle, not just from net new person to initial purchase. Get granular with your messaging. What channels are you talking to them on? What are those calls to action? And you're gonna talk very differently in your messaging if you're asking someone to give you more money than if you're saying, go turn on this thing, you already have access to it. We know that it's the same feature and it's the same value add, and people are gonna get really great results from it, but you have to talk about it differently. And then don't automate everything. Where can human touch augment messaging? Where can messaging augment human touch? If you automate everything, it's a lot harder to move things around or test things out. So start small, grow from there. Don't over-automate, don't automate everything. And then iterate. This is the biggest one. Set up a testing plan. Do not turn something on and then walk away and never look at it again. Because one day it's gonna stop working, and there were probably indicators that engagement was dropping or that it wasn't converting as well. So set up a testing plan and know what you're testing. So make it really, really granular. I know people love multivariate testing and they want to test 5 different things, 5 different ways. You'll never know what actually worked and didn't work. So test something against something else, keep doing that, and do it really, really granularly so that you know what's working and what's not. And that's it. Any questions? Yeah.
My question is around one of your slides talked about email, had an email campaign, an SMS campaign, and there was kind of like a cadence in terms of wait 1 day, wait 2 days. One of the issues that we have, and I think probably a lot of companies do, is that cadence for email engagement and touch points. And we find that obviously if there's too many emails, it's a drop off. You have a huge churn on that. But then there's a sweet spot where you can really get engagement throughout that funnel. Do you have any advice on when you're doing a campaign, how you can kind of stagger emails or when emails should be sent out, or is there a best practice for that?
So the fun thing about that is that there's no best practice across everyone sending email, right? It is going to be so specific to your audience. And so the biggest thing that I can suggest there is test on your audience. So what works for a company over here and their cadence and their style of messaging may not work for your company. And so the only way that you're gonna know what's working and what's not is testing. Obviously, you don't wanna send too many, and especially too many of the same type. So I think my CTO was joking the other day that, the too many emails is like 7 a day to one person. That's crazy. But a few a week is not bad, and even 2 a day is not bad. The biggest thing is, does it have value? Is it providing value to the person receiving the message? And if it is, it's not going to be too many emails. But ultimately, everyone defaults to like wait a day when they set it up, and then they just test the heck out of it and see what works. We also like to do like wait until something happens with that first email. So maybe wait until they open or engage with it before sending the next. But it's ultimately a testing game.
I'll try to speak up. Thank you so much for presenting. So I work at a very lean organization. I can imagine folks who work at very new organizations might not have the infrastructure built out to do all of this. What would be your recommendation? Is it get up on that infrastructure as quickly as possible, or hack your way to do a lot of this personalization first to prove the need for the automation and infrastructure?
Yeah, I would, if obviously resources are a big thing, but ultimately I would start making sure that you're at least tracking what you want to track, or those big sort of buckets. So do you at least know if these things are happening? And that's where I would start, and that's probably going to take a little bit of resource time to just know like when payments are happening, or like if they're touching the product. But a lot of small companies, platforms like ours even offer like freemiums or things like that, where you can start really proving the impact of even some sort of automation. So even a first welcome series, we got their email, we know some things about them, we know maybe what pages they had visited, and we know like the questions we ask, and just proving that some branching around that increases engagement will often sort of lead to, okay, now let's expand sort of resources into this and sort of prove it out. But I'd really start with, can we at least track what we're trying to impact?
Thank you for presenting again. My question was around the fact that how do you conduct psychoanalysis of your prospective customers? Is there social hearing involved? If yes, given the data privacy that is around, and a lot of people are now retracting from the social space and know that their behaviors are being tracked, do you foresee any challenges? If yes, are there any plans to mitigate those?
So we do not do any social hearing. The only sort of tracking outside of email engagement and things like that we do are those site visits. And then with GDPR coming out, we did implement, users have to accept cookies and all of that. So we don't have any privacy concerns on that front, but we do integrate with, social hearing platforms and bringing that data in. But ultimately, we're just sort of ingesting that data. So the only tracking we're doing is sort of across that site tracking. I don't necessarily see a huge difference in creating sort of targeted and personalized messaging if it's B2B or B2C. It's really just going to be, how are you talking about your product offering and your services to that person or consumer, to that person at stakeholder at a business or a consumer about what they're purchasing. But there isn't too much of a big distinction between the philosophy behind it for B2B or B2C. It's really more going to change the messaging more often than not.
All right, one more question. Take one more. Going once. See, I knew if I waited long enough.
Hello. This speaks to kind of the cadence of messages that are going to customers. I think with a lot of businesses, a lot come through a tool like ActiveCampaign, the email service provider, but a lot also might be manually triggered through something like SendGrid, directly from the product, and through salespeople, through surveys. So a lot of places people are getting communicated with. How do you manage that across the organization to make sure customers aren't getting over-messaged?
Yeah, ultimately, we try and get as many of those coming from the same delivery service as possible, just so there's more visibility into what's going out when. But we even run into it ourselves. We use Promoter.io for NPS. We have things going out directly from the system. Our product marketing team, when they were sort of building this out, met with every stakeholder in the business to understand that cadence and that schedule and where those things are going. Luckily, with things like SendGrid or more of those transactional messages, those are seen as such different. I need to get that message. It's either a receipt or something that I absolutely need to do. And so that's already seen a little bit differently as marketing and not like an over inundation of information. But ultimately, sort of an understanding of who's getting what when across those different platforms. And our product marketing team, when they started, did all of that and then made sure in their automations that they were accounting for that. So we actually have things to say, if they're in this automation as well, let's pause this for 2 days before resuming. And so you can sort of have that interdependency, knowing, are they also getting messaging over here about something different? And they can sort of manipulate automations to account for other ones. All right, thank you.